Hey everyone, this video is about how to control your anger. How to control your anger in 5 minutes or less. As I explain this to you, I'm just watching the Facebook dashboard flash in and out. So I'm staring at it going, okay, is this going to hold? How are you? Thanks for checking in. Thanks for listening in. I hope that this short story that I've got my watch on for to make sure I don't go too long is helpful for you today, as it was for me just recently. So instead of telling you just the mechanics of it, again, as always, let me share with you a quick story. Recently, I had a disagreement with one of my really good friends, and I'm not going to say their name because I never asked for permission to share their identity, but I can always share the story with you. So the story goes like this. My friend basically had a really bad day with their spouse. And it was one of those days where they just couldn't shake it off. Have you ever had those where you just wake up in the morning, you have a disagreement with your spouse or significant other, and for some reason that feeling just lingers and it carries on throughout your day? Well, recently I had that experience as my good friend was going through their struggle, and I just noticed that they were feeling extra easily agitated. It was just easy to get them upset. And so I asked them, I said, hey, are you going through something? Like, is there something else that's going on? I always like to check in, especially with my good friends who I know really well. I know them well enough that if they're having an off day, I can usually pick that up, even if it's a subtle indifference in their character. They proceeded to tell me that they had a disagreement with their spouse that caused them to feel like they weren't being respected, appreciated, or heard. And I understood, like, I get it. That's something that we all go through, even if our spouses don't mean it. It's something that just tends to happen from time to time. Well, if the experience ended there, then it would be fine, right? The challenge is that it proceeded. And like many things that we go through, when there's one situation that causes us to get angry and we don't resolve it, oftentimes that feeling of anger can start to bounce to other parts of our daily routine, of our daily activity, our daily life. And I just noticed that as we discussed almost anything that was outside of their belief system or what they planned or what they thought was accurate or what they wanted to do, it just wasn't, instead of it being discussed, the response was to go to anger, some level of anger. Call it disappointment, call it mad, call it yeah, I don't even know what else to call it, but you get what I mean. So eventually what happened is, after about almost 2 hours of this, I started asking questions. I started asking questions like, hey, I understand that you're mad, but is this really, this is when I didn't know it was about the spouse. I had to find that out later on. I started asking questions like, hey, is this really about our decision here for what we're going to do today? Or is this emotion you're feeling from something else? I started to ask other questions like, is there a reason why this much negative energy is being transferred over this small discussion or this small experience? Sometimes we get angry about stuff and we might dislike something, but if we show up this level angry, this could be like an 8, 9, or 10. But the situation only requires a level 1, 2, or 3 of anger. If it's even anger at that level, it might be like disappointment or, a dislike of some kind. Then it becomes really important to question where those emotions are coming from. Well, as we proceeded in our conversation, what I noticed is that no matter what I was asking, in most cases, the responses was aggressive, assertive. It was something that was out of my friend's ordinary, normal emotional response. And I could have been wrong. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. But every time I was unsure, I did ask to make sure, like, how are you feeling as you explain this to me? And of course, by asking, that in this case triggered more negative emotions from my friend. Well, I've got this thing in me that goes, I will be patient for just about anyone. If you're someone who's really close to me, I might be patient for you for weeks, months. If we're face to face, it might be hours or a heck of a lot of minutes. But no matter who you are, or no matter what the situation is, granted that nobody's trying to kill me, of course, um, if it's a situation where there's some negative emotions being shared, I am usually, not always, but I'm usually patient enough to sit back, ask questions, and try to dissect what is causing or what's triggering these feelings to come out. But even with me, okay, again, I'm human. Everyone's got a breaking point. Everybody's got a point where they just can't take it anymore. Have you been there? I'm sure you have, right? We all have. So what I started noticing in myself is that I started raising my voice. I started getting more short-tempered. I started feeling the old Alan come out, like this angry, as I've explained in my past videos, this angry guy. And I just started noticing that my breathing was getting short and my anger was starting to elevate. It started off at like a 1 or 2. After an hour and a half, it started turning into a 3 or 4. After almost 2 hours, it started turning into like a 5 or 6, maybe even a 7. Well, within those few minutes of elevated anger in myself and my emotions, instead of me continuing to just get mad, which is what the guy in his 20s would have done, what Alan would have done in his 20s, what started to happen was this little thing in my head just kind of snapped at me and said, boom, Alan, hold up. Like literally, it's like this voice in my head that goes, whoa, man, what are you doing? And the whoa, man is actually part of my brain. It's part of my subconscious. It's something that I created within myself that makes me more self-aware during times I'm not acting like my normal self. Okay, let me say it again. There's a part of my brain that's been programmed to wake up or just to come out and speak to me when my behavior is not in line with who I normally truly am. And that was not something I was born with. It wasn't something I was raised with. It was something that I had to learn in my early 30s. And I really learned to develop in my late 30s. And now I can't say I've mastered it, but I've got it to a point of high proficiency where if I'm acting out of my own character, like if I'm not in my regular personality, then it automatically kicks off and it gets me to self-assess. So why am I sharing this? I'm sharing it because in that moment of me getting angry, I'm getting more angry and I'm getting more angry. The moment that voice kicked in my head, it was like all of a sudden this bird's eye view that I got of me just kind of went, it kind of shot up, and it gave me an image of what I look like, what my friend looks like, and the interaction between us, as if I was getting a chance to watch myself from a big screen, but kind of like from a bird's eye view. It's amazing to me because I learned this technique years ago. The main category is called reframing. There's auditory reframing, there's kinesthetic reframing, there's visual reframing. There's a whole bunch of not a whole bunch. There's like 5 main types of reframing, and this is one of the 5. It still amazes me because the moment that my subconscious helped me look at myself, it gave me a chance to see what my own face looked like. And like you, I can't say like you. I don't know. Let me ask you instead. Have you ever seen what your own face looks like when you're angry? When you're in that moment of being heated, aggressive, mad, however you want to coin it, or you're basically just not demonstrating the best version of yourself. And hey, again, I'm not pointing fingers. I've been there. I was just there recently, not necessarily today, but recently, like past few days, which is why I'm here to share it with you. Well, I'm sharing that because, like the title of this video, how to minimize, how to take control over your anger in 5 minutes or less. Talking from personal experience, what that did for me is it got me a chance to look at myself, to look at how I was showing up. And within a few seconds of realizing, hey, Alan, even if you're justified, like this is me talking to myself, even if you're justified to speak this way, is this really something that you want to do? Like, is this really going to benefit you in the long run? Is this going to benefit your friend in the long run? Is this going to help your friendship or relationship with them in the long run? I always say in the long run because everything feels good in the moment, even getting upset. It feels right, feels justified, feels earned, feels like whatever. It feels like I am right, but that's momentary. And I've learned that by focusing only on the short term, usually long-term pain comes after, which is something I spent years experiencing, and I don't ever want to go through that ever again. I never want to go through the regret of losing my shit. So I hope your kids aren't around. I apologize if they are, but I want to keep it real with you. So conclusion is what happened when I had a chance to see myself from a third person perspective and see the situation. It instantly got me to reframe my own feelings because it made me realize in that moment, hey, Alan, you're not showing up to the best of your ability. You're just kind of reacting. And look, one thing I've learned from most people I know, reacting rarely helps anyone. Usually reacting makes almost everything we experience worse, like 10 times worse. So instead of reacting, what I had to do was learn to respond. So during that interaction with my friend where they were complaining and they were just picking just about everything, they're just mad about everything. Instead of me getting mad, what happened was my anger got up, then third person perspective kicked in, anger instantly started to go down. And as it started to go down, this question started coming into my head. Questions are important because the subconscious is designed like AI, like artificial intelligence. If you've ever used ChatGPT, which I'm assuming you have, or Gemini, or one of the bunch others that are out there right now, ChatGPT or AI only works best if you ask it a question. So if you tell it what to do, it'll kind of give you an answer. But if you ask, if you say, hey, how do I learn about this? Or what kind of things can you teach me about that? Or whatever it is, oftentimes it gives you a very detailed answer, especially with the more context that you give ChatGPT or AI. Well, guess what? Our subconscious works the same way. So as I was starting to dissipate my anger, my curiosity started to come up. Emotions never just work like both anger and sadness depleting. Like, for example, anger would go down, sadness would come up, or happiness would go up and sadness would go down. Like emotions work like a yo-yo. You never really have two emotions going up at the same time unless they're two similar emotions or what we call chained emotions. Like on a negative, mad mad could be equivalent to anger. And anger is usually a precursor to something much bigger like rage. Rage is usually the definition of anger that's repeated itself within a period of time, and it hasn't found a way to resolve whatever it's triggering the anger, which is why it grows and explodes to something like rage. Well, the same thing goes with curiosity. The curiosity emotion kicked in me because my anger started to go down. And the curiosity started to come up because the first question I had to learn to ask whenever I'm in a position where things are not working in my and like my way, the way that I want it to, or the way that I hope it to. One of the first questions I was ever taught was to intentionally ask the question, what can I learn from this? What can I learn from this? Now, of all the ChatGPT AI, mental AI questions I could have asked, why ask that? Well, I asked that because in NLP, we call it a presupposition. We are presupposing that there's something here that we can learn. And it's important that even though the subconscious doesn't always speak to us out loud, and it doesn't always give us control over the way we act and think, we at least have the ability to control and direct the kind of questions that we ask it in hopes that it gives us an answer that's leaning in our favor. And that's both positive and negative. So by asking the question, what can I learn from this? What that got my subconscious to do was, number one, it got me to look at the situation and analyze it. Like, why is my friend so upset? Why am I so upset? Why are we just getting upset at each other? We just got together like an hour and a half ago. Not today, but recently, right? Like, we just got together an hour and a half ago. And we're talking about like stuff, like hobbies and work, like nothing super personal. Like, why are we getting at each other's throats? Number two, when asking that question repeatedly with the intention of expecting my brain's going to give me some sort of answer, what it told me was this. What it told me is that I got triggered because I need to eat. Again, from yesterday's video about the rice, like I hadn't eaten in like 4 hours. So my energy was depleting. Number one, Alan, you need to eat. Number two, your friend. My brain is telling me, my subconscious mind is telling me, your friend is hurt. They don't mean to lash out at you. That's just a result of them not resolving their own personal issues with their spouse. So don't take it so personally, bro. Like, sometimes my brain talks to me like a kid, okay? Like, don't take it so personally, bro. Chill. So in that moment, what I did is I looked at my friend after receiving this advice from my subconscious. And I basically looked at them and said, hey, like, I understand that you're mad. I understand that you're going through something at home that isn't resolved. I understand. And even though it's not my fault, like I don't have a part to do in your household. I do feel sorry for you. Like, I just want to say, I'm sorry that you have to go through that. I wish there was something I can do. And you know what's interesting? When the emotion becomes softened, not always, but oftentimes the person who's really angry can also become a little softer themselves. That's what we call matching and mirroring in neuro-linguistic programming, where if someone's feeling a certain way, sometimes, not always, again, you got to know when to pick it, but sometimes it's very valuable to match that person's emotion for a few moments, because subconsciously that triggers a feeling of familiarity. And once that's triggered as familiarity, oftentimes we can guide them to a different direction in emotional state. And so because I was angry at first while my friend was angry, there was the familiarity. Second, what I did is I started to calm down. And as I started to calm down, not right away, but after a few more minutes, my friend started to calm down as well. So I ended up asking my friend, I said, hey, I know that you're going through this, and I feel sorry for you, and I'm sorry that you got to go through it. But how would you want to deal with this? Because right now, I don't believe this is who you really want to be. Like, you're showing up, you're angry, you're mad about just about everything. You're nitpicking at all these little things. And look, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. When I said to them, I'm like, look, I know you don't mean it like that. I know you don't mean it like you're better than that. You are better than that. So I get that it's not going your way, but how can we resolve this, at least here? So the stuff that you're going through at home doesn't have to trickle over into our day, into our time spent here. Because obviously I got no part with what you got to go through at home. So in order for us to, get rid of that emotion, there has to be a way that you can resolve that inside yourself. Now, I got to tell you, even though in that moment, the matter was not resolved, even though in that moment, there were still issues in the air, there's still challenges that my friend had to face when going home to their spouse. The one thing I did recognize is that it at least, number one, helped me to get back in control, because I was starting to lose my emotional control. I was starting to get angry. But the moment I matched the anger, even momentarily, and then I started to slow down and to calm down, it also allowed my friend the space to calm down as well. And by asking those questions, instead of saying, which I more commonly hear, things like, well, you should do this, you should tell them that, you should, commanding somebody or giving commanding communication when someone's angry rarely works. So usually it's better to ask them a question. And my questions were things like, well, is there a way that you can at least resolve this inside yourself? Is there a way that you can look at this from a different perspective that makes you less angry? Now, I also asked, is there something going on with your spouse that maybe you're not aware of? Like maybe they're angry, maybe they disagreed with you, maybe they're just going through their stuff too. Like, what if they had a really shitty day at work? And I know, okay. I know it's not your responsibility to deal with that because their work is their work. But what if they accidentally brought that crap home and accidentally spilled that onto you? Well, you might be asking, what's the purpose of even bringing that up, Alan? Well, the purpose is that when we get angry, we tend to take things very personally. Like that individual is attacking me. That individual is making me wrong. That individual is trying to control me. And sometimes that's true. And other times it's actually not. It's just that individual we're dealing with is just really hurt, or they're really upset about someone else, or they feel taken for granted, taken advantage of, or they felt that they were not understood or not appreciated, but from somebody else in their life. When we can recognize that we're not always the source of somebody's anger, of somebody's pain, and if we can disconnect that belief, not from them just telling us, but from us first discovering that inside ourselves, a lot of times just knowing that alone can reduce the anger level so much, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70%, to at least get it to a point where we can better manage ourselves versus be in a position where they're getting angry and we just get triggered. They get angry and we just get triggered. That's the thing we're trying to avoid. That's the thing we're trying to learn from, not to do, right? So I'm now 22 minutes in. I'm just going to recap this video. I always try to make these things shorter for you guys, but it's, like this is such an important subject. Forgive me if this is a little long, but I want you to know that there's always a way to get out of our emotional negative stuff. And sometimes it just takes a friendly voice to remind us, well, there is another way to do it that's less damaging, both to ourselves and the people that we care about, the people that we love, the people that surround us. So let me recap this video, okay? Next time we get angry, next time you might get angry, number one, recognize that there is a possibility, there is a way, not a guarantee, because you got to practice. It's a skill. There's a way to get yourself out of the aggression or the feeling angry. You just have to believe that it's possible. Okay, number one. By believing that it's possible, number two, it then becomes the question of how. And the easiest way to sum up this video is that everyone has a trigger to get angry, to get sad, but that also works on the positive side. We also have triggers for getting happy, excited, aroused, curious, funny, friendly, caring. Like everyone has a trigger. Just most people don't talk about what are the positive triggers. Usually we talk about the negative ones, right? And for me, it happened to be a visual cue where I look up at myself and I see how I'm acting from the top down. That's called the bird's eye view or third person perspective. It's a technique that's taught in a lot of personal development groups. Number three, the next part is, okay, once you have that shift, once you have that reframe technique, how do we use it? Well, we use that by creating a trigger inside ourselves. So my trigger is if I'm like mad and my eyeballs just start to get really big. I'm looking really ridiculous right now. I know, but I want you to get a visual, like, getting crazy. My body, my nervous system is triggered to turn on that other side of me that goes, whoa, man, chill. Like who the hell's showing up here right now? I don't have to think it. I don't have to try it. I don't have to work at it. Not at this stage. I have rehearsed, practiced, refined that technique so much that 90% of the time it shows up within minutes. The other 10% of the time shows up after hours or days, depending on the severity of my situation, right? But in most cases, 90% of the time, it just pops up. So for you, what you can get from this video is if learning how to reframe or how to calm down your own anger before you rely on somebody else to help you, if that is something of interest to you, then I was going to say, let's start with this. Go to ChatGPT Go to AI or go to Google. Google's okay, but ChatGPT is usually a lot more refined. In ChatGPT, just type in this: be my neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis specialist. That's the entry prompt. And then follow it up by saying, give me a list of 5 simple reframing techniques that I can use today to help me get better control of my anger starting now. Type that in and just watch. It'll spit out a whole bunch of different ideas, concepts, techniques, tools that you can use. And all you got to do is just go down that list and just try them all, or pick one that's familiar to you and see how that works. I'm leaving that to you as a potential, call it a homework assignment, exercise, whatever you want to call it. Because I believe that in order for us to learn something and not just know it, like not just consciously know it, but get it into our nervous system, get into our body. So it's something that starts to come out when we need it to. Kind of like driving and swerving when a car is about to crash into us. That's not something that you can just get to have somebody tell you what to do, right? There's no driving instructor on earth that can tell you in the moment how to swerve when a car is coming at you. That's just something you automatically do. Techniques regarding anger and controlling anger happen to work the same way. It's something you got to study. You got to find it for yourself, and you got to rehearse that in your head first. Do that. And if it's cool, I'd like to suggest share it in the comment section below. Let us know what you found. Let us know what's worked for you. And also let us know what doesn't work. Nothing's perfect out there. Everything's got a flaw, everything. But we're not trying to find perfection. We're just trying to find what could work for you and for others here in the group. Okay? And if you guys have a bunch that do work well, great. If some of them don't work well, then I'd be more than happy to chime in and share with you some of the other reframing tools that I learned along the way. But I'm interested to find what you discover for yourself as well. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks so much. If it has been, please leave us a like on this video and share a comment if you got something that you want to share about what I talked about today. Hope this helps. Have a great morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching. We'll talk to you soon.